Hello, everybody. It's Friday again, as I like to say, Friday again. So, welcome back to our Grief and Loss Through Faith series. I believe now we are on episode number five, 4 or 5. I'm losing count. But either way, these are heartfelt videos that I am starting to do to share with other people who have experienced loss in their life. And this is just a way for us to come together and just share experiences. Me sharing my experiences. Hopefully, other people will chime in to share their experiences. And then the most important part of this is hopefully is helping you. Um, it's something to be said about knowing and understanding that we're not the only ones experiencing or going through what we're going through, especially when it comes to grieving. When it comes to moving on in our lives and just trying to navigate that space, figure ourselves out when we lose somebody that's really close to us, when we're just learning how to live life differently. And that's really what it's all about. We lived a certain way for so many years. We lived with our spouses and we lived with our siblings or our parents. They leave us and that's all we really known. And then suddenly our life shifts, our lives change, and things are just not the same, and we have to learn to navigate that space differently while going through the hurt, while going through the grief, while going through the loss and the pain. So hopefully these experiences, these videos are helping some of you or all of you. Share it. Feel free to share it with people who who are just having a hard time right now. This is difficult. Losing somebody close to you is difficult. And as I said in previous videos, not just losing somebody, because they are no longer here or they passed away, but just losing something that's near and dear to you. Again, it could be, going through a breakup. That's loss, and that can be painful. Um, in my practice, I treat a lot of people who have gone through divorces are, they're very hard. um, and people, when they are going through a divorce or a separation, especially if they've been married for so many years, they're trying to navigate how their life is going to look now. Some, couples, they have to learn how to co-parent while still moving on in their different direction. That can be difficult and hard. Some people, especially now, have been laid off or fired or downsized for a job that they've been on for years and years and years. Maybe a job that they thought they would be retiring from, and suddenly things shifted and they're no longer there. So they're trying to figure out, do I go back to school? Do I continue in this field? Do I do something differently? How does my life look from this point forward? So loss is loss, and loss can be hard. Okay. And in the previous videos, I shared, my personal experience, coming to you raw and uncut. I talked about what it means to restore joy back into your life again, even after the loss, even while going through the pain. We talked about what it means to have fun and not feel guilty about it, because fun is essential and vital to our mental health, to our physical health, to our emotional health. And then last week, we talked about what it means to just be in the present moment and to be able to learn patience. I think that's so hard for so many of us because we don't really know how to be still. We don't know how to just rest in the moment and live in present moment awareness. We want to get to where we want to get to, or oftentimes we stay stuck in the past, but we don't know how to live in the moment. We struggle with that, myself included. I know I've struggled with that because my philosophy is, if I want something and I'm believing for something and I'm standing on something, I'm like, where is it? What's going on? God, are you hearing my prayers? Why is it not manifesting? And what I've learned over the last couple of years is what it means to truly just embrace the moment. And I can tell you all, when you do that, it's so refreshing because you're not struggling and you're not fighting and you're not being challenged to try to get to the next thing and get to the next thing and get to the next thing. There's always going to be a next thing. So why not just slow down and enjoy where you're at? Enjoy your your journey, right? And so for today's episode, I want to talk about how are you coping? Okay? So you've experienced loss. Rather it's very fresh loss. It happened a week ago, a month ago, a couple of years ago, and you're still struggling with it, whatever that loss is, right? And you're trying to move on. You're trying to navigate that space. You're trying to figure yourself out. In some cases, you're trying to redefine and rediscover who you are without that person that you lost, right? And that can be difficult sometimes. But the question is, how are you coping? Because if we're not careful, we go into what I call getting on autopilot mode, right? We go through life just, going through the regular routine, not really paying attention to anything. We're kind of emotionally numb. We're, not really paying attention to the people in our lives, what's going on around us. And the days turn into months, the months turn into years, and before you know it, we look back and we're like, I don't even know how I've gotten through one day after the other. So, my question for you today is, how are you coping? What are you doing to get through to the next day? Because remember, whatever it is we're going through in life is a moment by moment by moment by moment thing, right? The moment that you experience significant pain, 30 minutes from that moment is going to be different. And then 30 minutes more from that moment is going to be different still. No moment is ever the same. It may feel like you're just stuck and everything is happening around you and you're just in slow mo and the world is moving on. But the truth of the matter is, your moments are different. And what I want to speak to you about today is, how are you coping in the moment? Think about, what do you do when you first wake up? What's your coping? What is your coping skill? What do you do to help yourself get up out of bed? What are some of the first thoughts that are coming to your mind when you wake up in the morning? What do you do after that? Are you, if you're still working, do you have to push yourself and force yourself to go to work? And if so, how are you coping with that? What do you do when you walk out of your door in the morning? What do you do as you're driving to and from your destinations? What are you thinking about? What's going on through your mind? And most importantly, how are you feeling? And are you learning to sit with that? How are you coping? Because what we don't want to do is get caught up in running away from our pain, numbing our pain, try not to face the pain. The best thing we can do to rediscover or to take back our power with anything that we're going through is to face it head on. Just face it head on, even if it feels scary, because it's just the feeling. Feelings are fickle, they come and go, they don't last. So, the best thing we can do when we're in that moment of pain is just to sit with it, look at it, see it, label it, call it out for what it is until it passes by. Because nothing in this life is permanent. It doesn't last. Not even our problems. What you was experiencing last year this time that you thought was not going to pass by or come to an end, you're here now, right? And it's gone. And now you move on to the next problem. And then in the future, it's probably going to be more problems still. But the thing is, how do you cope? Do you think about your coping strategies, your techniques, things that you do that's going to help you? Rather it's just getting outside in the sun and taking a walk. Maybe you curl up with a good book. Maybe you watch and binge one of your favorite series on Netflix or, Paramount Plus or Hulu, or whatever your streaming source is. Maybe you call up a good friend and you say, hey, let's go out for dinner or go and have some drinks. Whatever it is for you, You have to be cognizant of how you're coping because you don't want to allow yourself to get stuck in that rut. You don't want to go down that hole of getting stuck in that rut, and then it's taking you that much longer to climb out of it. There are many, many, many things that are out here to help you cope in a healthy way. Now, we can cope in things that are what we call maladaptive, like, I don't want to feel this pain, so I'm gonna just smoke, 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 smoke until I don't feel anything. Or I'm going to take this substance so I'm numb to it, or I'm going to drink until I can't drink anymore and blacking out from it. All of those things are maladaptive because what happens is as soon as those things wear off, which it will do, you're faced right back, looking you right dead in the face, those problems again. They don't just disappear until we willing to stand up and face them head on. Is when we face them, we take back our power, because what's going to happen is when we look at those problems square in the eye and sit through that pain, eventually they're going to just go away. They're going to start to evaporate. They're going to decrease. Now, I'm not going to say they may not come back around again, but what I will say is in that moment, it's not going to last. You watch them as they go away. Now, one of the exercises I do with my clients in something called acceptance and commitment therapy is something called Watch the Thinker. And this is a practice that we call cognitive diffusion, which is how we're able to unfuse from our thoughts, right? The first thing we have to recognize that a thought is a thought is a thought. The thought doesn't define you. The thought shouldn't be dictating your next action. The thought shouldn't be telling you how to react or to behave. The first thing we must recognize is that a thought is a thought, whether the thought is positive, negative, or indifferent. So recognize what the thoughts are. And then if the thoughts start to permeate into physical manifestations, which is your emotions and your body sensations, then you can recognize those too and you can label them. I'm feeling frustrated right now because blank, blank, blank. I'm angry right now because dot, dot, dot. You can sit with those things and you can label them. And by all means, feel them. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you shouldn't be or can't be angry or frustrated or, you know, feeling betrayed or distrustful. Feel what you feel is your feelings, but don't let your feelings dictate what you're going to do next. Don't let your feelings take the lead over your behaviors. That down the line will mess you up. And later on, I'm going to do something, a series called The Power of the Pause, because we don't really take the second to pause before we react. Something happens, we do this. And then next thing you know, we're getting ourselves in trouble because we reacted off of our emotions, right? So we have to sit down and figure out what are some healthy things that we can do for ourselves. What are those things that maybe we did when we were kids or younger that we really enjoyed? We really, really enjoyed it. What's to say that we can't go back and do those things, right? Sometimes it's going fishing. Maybe you haven't been fishing in a long time. And maybe it's, going to the museums. The weather's starting to warm up. So you go to the museums with a couple of your friends and family members. Maybe it's having a picnic in the park and just enjoying the outdoors. Maybe it's inviting people, family members and friends over for a nice little cookout or barbecue in your backyard or on your deck. Whatever it is for you, have those coping strategies available to you so that when you start feeling those moments of down and despair and in the dumps, you can do something to pull yourself back up. But this is the key, right? You want to be able to plan out or list those coping strategies ahead of time. Don't wait till you're feeling down and in the dumps to think about what your coping strategy should be, because your brain isn't going to want to go there, I promise you. But do that when you're having a good day. Do that when you're smiling and everything is feeling pretty okay, because I told you before, with grief and loss, it's an up and down thing. It's not linear, right? You're not going to just go through this thing at this moment at this time, and then this thing at this moment at this time, and this thing at this moment until it's over. You're going to have good days where you're feeling up and you think, oh, I got through it. And then you're going to have those ambush moments where you're like, oh, I'm still crying over this. Oh my gosh, when will it end? And then the next day you're up, and then the next day you're down. But do the coping strategies list when you're feeling up. Make that list, write it in your journal, write it on a wall, put it somewhere on a place in your home where you can see it. So when you have those emotional lows, you can refer to that coping list and you can do some of those things that's going to help pull you up. Okay? So think about how you're coping. That's so important. Don't just let life happen without doing something that's within your power to do to help you get through, right? For some people, it's whipping open that wonderful Bible and just, allowing yourself to be in the moment and read the word and read God's promises and think about what he has said about this situation or that situation. Sometimes that's what it's going to take. Sometimes it's just meditating on the word and understanding that God is always there and he's never going to leave us nor forsake us. This season is but for a time, and then it's going to be something else. So, like I generally do each week, I do want to share a scripture with you. Okay. um, I think it's important that we have something that we can reflect on in terms of, what the Bible says. If you're truly, a religious person and you're using something or whatever your higher power is to kind of guide you, it's good to have something, okay, to give you hope or expectation for something better, right? I do want to share Numbers 23:19 because I think that's so important to share because some of us get so caught up in our prayers, our hopes, what we expected not coming to pass, or the things we expected not turning out the way we wanted it. So we feel like, what's the point? There's always a point because, like I said before, if you're still here, you still have purpose, right? So I do want to share with you for this week, Numbers 23:19. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. He has said, and he will do it. His word will not return unto him unfulfilled. His word will not return to him unfulfilled. So that is it. That's all we have for today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all back on next Friday. Bye.